If you're an independent author preparing to print and publish your book, you're going to be glad you found this video. If you're watching this, maybe you've designed your cover already or typeset your own interiors, or maybe you've hired a professional to do it all for you. In either case, you want to be sure that your files are set up correctly before you send them to print or upload them to print-on-demand services like Amazon KDP or Ingram Spark. Wherever you are in the self-publishing process, this video will introduce you to 10 key terms every indie author should know. Knowledge of these terms will help save you money and time and help prevent production headaches later on. My name is Michael Pietromon, founder of Foglio Custom Book Specialists. I've been designing books for independent authors for about 10 years now, and I want to help you get a head start on your publishing journey with the insights I've gathered over the past decade. One thing to keep in mind, either when hiring a book designer or endeavoring to format your files yourself, is that print is primary. Everything you do leading up to print should have print in mind. By the end of this video, you'll be familiar with the most common print terminology, and better yet, you'll know how to use it. Trim size is the final width and height of your book after the printer cuts down the pages. Common sizes for trade paperbacks are 5.5 by 8.5 or 6 by 9. Trim size matters because it affects cost, page count, spine width, and even how your readers perceive your genre. It also dictates your cover template and interior layout, so it is one of the first decisions you need to make. Here's my tip. Open a few bestsellers in your category and copy their trim size. If you need to save on cost, try multiple sizes in your printer's calculator before you decide, because a change in size can also change your page count. Or you could just go for the tried and true 5.5 by 8.5 or half letter trim size. I find this one's perfect for reading, it's comfortable in the hands, it's portable, and it gives you a reasonable amount of white space, even with generous margins. Bleed and safe area. Bleed is artwork that extends past the trim so color or photos can go right to the edge. You may not know this, but printers can't print to the very edge of a sheet of paper. We have to print a little bit beyond it and then trim on the inside. So that's what bleed is. Bleed is that extra little bit of ink or toner or what have you that goes past the trim line, allowing us to have images going right to the edge. The safe area, on the other hand, is what happens on the inside of that line. So, on this back cover, you can see we got pretty close to the safe area, but we're still within it. So we're safe. If we crept beyond this a little bit, print naturally, because it's an organic thing, has variance and there is a tolerance for error. So it's very possible that text or graphical elements could be cut off. So don't put anything too important near the edge of the page. This is important because without bleed, you may see thin white slivers at the edge, and without a safe area, text can be cut off. Printers trim stacks of paper and tiny shifts are normal. Bleed and safe areas help keep you protected. I've got a simple tip for this one, which is fairly common in the print industry. Set your bleed to 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeters on all sides, and keep live text at least 1/4 of an inch inside of the trim. So you want your text or any important information, any important elements in a graphic to be 1/4 inch away from the edge of the page. Margins and gutter. Margins are the blank space around a page, like what you see around there, top, bottom, and the gutter. These prevent text from sinking into the spine or getting too close to the safe area on the outside. Margins and gutter matter because they control readability to a large extent. Generous outer margins feel calm and rich and very high quality, and a proper gutter keeps the inner line of text from creeping too far into the spine and ultimately becoming illegible. Here's a tip for this one. Start with the outer margins around 1/2 an inch and add at least 1/8 to 1/4 inch on the inner side for the gutter. The effect of this is that when the book is ultimately printed and bound, and you've got a little bit of space taken up by the binding, your imprint will look pretty much centered on the page, which is a great look, and it really looks professional. As your page count rises, increase the gutter and confirm with a printed proof. If you're printing on a heavier stock and you have a lot of pages, you might want to increase that gutter size to maybe even 1/2 inch oversize. Spine width. Spine width is the thickness of your book's spine based on page count and paper bulk. It matters because your cover file must use the exact correct spine width of the interior block of pages. If it's wrong, the title can drift onto the front or the back, or most printers or print on demand services won't even print the thing. You'll have to keep going over and over and revising the file. And if someone does manage to print it, it's going to look off. It's going to look terrible. And it's going to look like a hack job. Never guess the spine. Use your printer's calculator for the exact paper you will use. And print-on-demand services like Amazon KDP or Ingram Spark provide free-to-use spine width calculators on their websites. If your page count is changing for any reason at all, you're going to want to change your spine widths. Even if you're removing or adding a single page or 2 pages, it might seem insignificant, but it's very important that you adjust the spine accordingly. Paperweight and finish. Paperweight is measured in GSM or pounds. Text stock is used for the interiors, while cover stock is the heavier sheet used for the cover, of course. Common finishing options for these stocks are uncoated, gloss, or matte. Paper choice matters because it affects opacity, show-through, color, feel, and cost. An uncoated stock is perfect for text-based books, as it's easier on the eyes, it doesn't play with the light too much, while photo-heavy books often use a coated stock, like a silk, matte, or gloss-coated text-weight stock. In some cases, we might use multiple stocks within a single book. For example, Here Comes the Sun by Alan Bryce. In this book, we used a cream interior stock, uncoated, for the text pages, and this lovely silk-coated white stock for the color pages, really bringing those colors out in the photos and making everything pop. For the cover, if you're going the print-on-demand route, you don't have many options for the cover stock. It's always going to be the same 12-point, I think, gloss-coated stock. Over top, they're going to put a lamination, and that is what you have a choice over. So you can choose gloss or matte or soft touch in most cases. If you're going offset printing, you have many more options, including debossing, foiling, spot UV, you name it. My practical tip for choosing an interior stock is to use a 50 to 70 pound uncoated text weight stock. And in most cases, I would recommend choosing a cream or off-white paper color instead of the bleach white that you find like in your home copy printer. That is an option with most printers, and I would recommend that for books that have a lot of color images in them, and the fidelity of those images is very important to the book. But in most cases where the book is just text-based, and that is most books, I would highly recommend doing a cream or off-white stock. It just plays with the light a little bit nicer. It's easier to read, it's warmer, it's more inviting, and it encourages people to keep reading. Whereas the white stock can feel very clinical and cold, and I prefer not to read books like that. For the cover, I would certainly recommend laminating. When you print through Amazon KDP or Ingram Spark, they're going to laminate your cover. You just have to choose which option you like, whether it's matte or gloss or sometimes soft touch. If you're doing an offset run or a small run with your local printer, in those cases, you might have the option to do uncoated and no lamination at all. And you might find that to be appropriate or perfectly acceptable for your book, and that's fine. But if you want this thing to last more than a couple of years, especially if you want people to actually read this thing and get their hands on it, it's going to get damaged, and the lamination does provide a little extra protection for that. Binding. When it comes to binding, you've probably heard many of these terms thrown around, like perfect bound, PUR bound, case bound, Smythe sewn, saddle stitched, coil bound, surlocks. In most cases, you're going to be publishing a book that looks either like this or like this. Binding matters because it affects durability, how the book opens, and how premium it feels. A thick paperback book with weak glue will crack. A keepsake hardcover with Smythe sewn signatures will last for years. Here's a good rule of thumb when it comes to binding. Use PUR glue for thicker paperbacks. Now, I recognize that you as an author don't have very much control over the binding process or really any aspect of the printing process, except the files that you prepare. But you can ask your offset printer or your short-run publisher what type of materials they're using when they're printing, and that'll give you a good feel for the quality of the end product before you even hold it in your hands. If your book is over 300 pages, I would almost certainly recommend using PUR glue or finding a printer that does. If you're doing a case-bound hardcover, you have to do Smith sewn. I've seen many hardcover books bound with PUR glue only, in much the same way that a softcover book would be printed and bound. And it just doesn't work. The pages fall out. Like, you open up that book once or twice and the pages are falling out. It's terrible, and it will not last, almost certainly, because the reason for that is that the spine on a hardcover book is much more malleable and flexible. You can kind of see there. I mean, this one's not moving much because it was printed and bound properly, but there's quite a bit of play. It's almost like a spring, if you see that, how that moves. You don't want all that movement on a merely glue-bound book. It's going to fall apart. I've seen it happen many, many times, and the work's just going to have to be redone. Image resolution and file prep. Resolution is the detail in your images. For print, aim for around 300 dpi at the final size, although when I'm asking for files from clients, I typically ask for 600 dpi. The reason for this is that if we're using an image for the book cover, for example, and this author has plans to really promote this thing and maybe eventually get a billboard or some kind of oversized artwork or a banner or something like that, that higher resolution will carry on, and we don't have to go back and redesign the cover and make adjustments later on. We have files from the get-go that are prepared for that larger output. Logos and artwork should be in vector form, and fonts should be embedded. This matters because low-resolution images can look fuzzy on paper, and missing fonts can cause reflows or substitutions you never intended. I've actually seen this kind of thing happen quite a bit, especially early on when I didn't know much about setting things up for print. What would often happen is that if fonts were not embedded in a PDF and then it gets to the printer's machine, they have a font that's in conflict. Maybe it has the same name, but it's a true type rather than an open type, or some discrepancy in the fonts there. The result is that it kind of scrambles up the letters, and it looks like an alien language. It's very strange what happens. I'm not sure about the mechanics of it, but all I know is that you got to embed your fonts in your PDFs. And of course, image resolution is vital. You can check these settings in Photoshop or even in InDesign, but the easiest way to go about this is to get your PDF, whether you're working with a designer or making the files yourself, and just zoom in as far as you can and see what the resolution is like. That'll give you a pretty good idea of the pixelation. If when you start to zoom in, it looks pixelated very early on, you're going to need to revisit those files and get a higher resolution version. Signatures and creep. Printers fold large sheets into sections called signatures, often 16 or 32 pages each. Creep is the tiny outward shift of inner pages when a thick book is trimmed. This matters for longer books because images or page numbers placed too close to the outer edge can walk toward the trim as creep increases. My tip for this is to avoid critical artwork or page numbers right on the outer edge of very thick books. This is very similar to what I said earlier about bleed and safe area. You just want to keep everything away from the edges. In most cases, if you're printing on Amazon KDP or Ingram Spark, you might do a hardcover. And it might be a very thick hardcover, but in most cases it's going to be a PUR or perfect bound softcover book where no matter the page count, I mean, you're always going to have a consistent, fairly consistent margin on either side. So it's nothing you need to worry about in most cases. But if you are doing a more custom print run or doing Smith sewn and so on, this is something you'll want to keep in mind, especially for larger books like textbooks. Color. When it comes to print, there are a few color terms that need to be unpacked a bit. First and foremost is CMYK. CMYK signifies 4 different colors: cyan, magenta, yellow, and key or black. These 4 colors combine to produce pretty much any color that can be printed. Spot colors like Pantone, on the other hand, are pre-mixed inks for special hues. Spot colors ensure impeccable consistency across brand assets. Think of like Coca-Cola red or John Deere green, iconic colors that must be just right in every instance. Most self-publishing authors won't have to worry about spot colors, but it's an interesting point to keep in mind as you might encounter these terms when preparing your files in InDesign. Rich black is a CMYK build used for large black areas to look deep and even. Color settings matter because files left in RGB will shift on press, if your printer will even print them. A photo that looked bright on your screen can look dull and diluted. A photo that looks bright and vivid on your screen can look dull and diluted when it's in print if you do not convert it correctly. Using the wrong black as well can also cause gray text or muddy solids. My tip is to convert images to CMYK before you begin the design process. Now, if you're working on the design yourself, certainly you're going to need these images in CMYK. If you're working with a professional designer, you might think that they would do it themselves, and in many cases they will, but I would just convert to CMYK anyways to be safe. Another important point is to keep body text on the interiors 100% black only. Don't use rich black, don't use any CMYK combination, or definitely not RGB, as we already discussed. Coatings and laminates. Coatings protect and finish your cover. You'll probably hear terms like aqueous coating, UV coating, and laminates like gloss, matte, and soft touch. This matters because finish changes durability and the feel of your book. Matte looks refined but can scuff a little more easily. Gloss is more resistant and can make colors pop, but it might look a little outdated in most cases. Soft touch feels luxurious and like velvet in your hands, but it might show fingerprints, especially on darker areas. Here's how to choose. If your cover is mostly dark, consider gloss or a hard-wearing matte. If you want a more premium feel, try soft touch, which goes really nicely with foiling or spot UV on the title. Always ask for real samples and handle them yourself. Something might sound good now that I'm talking to you about it, but once you hold it in your hands, you might feel that it's not right for your book at all. If you learn these 10 terms, you'll be well equipped to move to the printing stage of your publishing project. Your book will pass pre-flight without any surprises, and most importantly, your book will look and feel like it belongs on the shelf with all the other great titles. If you want some help picking trim size, paper, or binding that fits your budget, check the links below. You'll find guides on trim, paper, cover design, and ISBNs and more. If that still doesn't answer your questions, feel free to book a free consultation with me and I'd be happy to chat in more detail. If you have any questions at all or other recommendations for terms and tips, leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, you can reach me at foglioprint.com and I'd be happy to chat about your self-publishing project. Until the next time, thanks for watching.